Welcome to Sincerely Me, a podcast about self-discovery and inner work so you can cultivate a deeper relationship with yourself and show up more fully in your work and life. My name is Tallia and I'm honored to be your host. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sincerely Me. I am on a whole other level of excitement today because this week officially was launch week for the Inner Work Circle. And what I want to invite you to do is take a moment to imagine this. Waking up every day with the courage to show up as your authentic self. With a strong sense of worth, you speak up for what you want, set appropriate boundaries, and make empowered choices. You trade perfection for authenticity and have the tools to release what no longer serves you. You nurture your relationship with yourself, knowing that you too deserve a life of ease and abundance. And what I've noticed is what stands in our way of this life is that we get so caught up in the doing and the achieving and being quote unquote more. And before we know it, we lose touch with ourselves. Fear keeps us sitting in comfort, playing small, and dimming our light for the sake of other people. We continue to settle for mediocrity because somehow we think it's maybe easier that way. Our minds run the show, our intuition takes a back seat, and we're living out someone else's definition of success. On top of all of that, we're going at it alone, neglecting our need for true connection and community. And that pretty much summed up my life until I realized that I had the power to choose how I showed up. By slowing down, finding stillness, and really asking myself some tough questions, I was able to regain a sense of clarity and reconnect to what was actually true for me. In some ways, it took getting to know myself all over again, or maybe for the first time, while also finding a community of women who could lift me up and show me what was possible. If you are here listening, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, deep down, you might also know that there has got to be a more authentic way to show up in your work and life. All we need is the time and space to slow down, find stillness, and connect with what's true for ourselves. And I'm here today and every day to tell you that if there's ever a time to show up as your whole authentic self, it's now. The world needs it. I'm also here to tell you that it begins with the courage to turn inward and dig deep. It takes time. It takes patience to face your fears and learn how to dream again. It requires self-compassion, accountability, and outside perspective. Only then can we return to a place of unwavering inner strength where we feel connected to ourselves, aligned with our truth, and excited by possibility, alongside women who also get it. That's why I created the Inner Work Circle, a year-long experience for an intimate group of women who are ready to show up more fully in work and life as their authentic selves. With monthly virtual sessions and 2 in-person getaway retreats throughout the year, the Inner Work Circle will guide you through a remarkable process of self-discovery and inner work that gives you the tools to do a couple things. Number 1, identify what's holding you back and release what no longer serves your highest good. Number 2, regain a sense of clarity and confidence in yourself and your path. Number 3, deepen your sense of self-worth and value. Number 4, connect to your inner self and find your voice. 5, set appropriate boundaries and hold space for yourself. 6, make empowered choices that are no longer based in fear. Number 7, create meaningful habits rooted in mindfulness-based practices. And number 8, apply the life-changing principles of positive psychology to your daily life. We are not meant to walk the path of inner work alone. And I've seen it in my own life. When we come together as women to do this work, we elevate not only ourselves, but also each other. Enrollment for our August cohort is now open. Of course, if you've been listening to the podcast, you've known this for a while, and hopefully you've gotten the sneak peek in your inbox. So if any of this resonates with you, if you feel called to be a part of this year's Inner Work Circle, I've linked the application in the show notes. And July 19th is the early bird deadline. So take a peek. I would be so honored if you would take the time and ask yourself if it's right for you. All right, enough about the Inner Work Circle. We've got a rock star guest to talk about. Today's episode is with the lovely Lillian Charles. She is so many things. Most of you who are listening and who heard about the episode through her, you would know that she is the founder of Style Therapy and Intentionally Gray, and does a lot of working magic in closets. When she's not doing styling work or leading personal development workshops, shopping for clients, she can be found teaching cycling classes at Burn Studios. She is such a force, and I was so excited to have a conversation with Lillian on the podcast. You will be subject to a lot of girl crushing on the episode. We talk a lot about, we talk a lot about a lot of things. The main center point of the conversation today is on taking up space and showing up authentically. And as you'll hear when Lillian gets us going with her story in the beginning of the episode, she really sees styling and clothing as a way to help women express themselves authentically. So we'll start with her work and how this shows up in her work, but then we'll get into a bigger conversation about owning our life stories, sharing our stories, and not being afraid to be seen. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, here is my conversation, I don't know what that accent was, with the lovely Lillian.
Oh, I love this. I'm so excited. So in 2011, I started a business that was then called Wardrobes by Lillian Charles. I go into women's closets and I really help them release what isn't working for them in terms of their clothing, their shoes, even their jewelry, their bags, and just kind of strip down what they've been putting on their exterior if it hasn't been working. And then I show them along the way, like why things aren't working and why they're getting frustrated with choosing the same things over and over again that really aren't serving them. And then usually from there, I make some suggestions, but we also go ahead and book a shopping appointment, particularly when women have just been choosing the completely wrong thing for their bodies, which is so many women. And so, yeah, that's the process. I always tell people the medium that I use is clothing, but the work that I do is very spiritual. I rebranded in 2017 to Style Therapy because I realized just how much coaching I'd been doing. And I almost felt like just calling it a wardrobe overhaul was too frivolous, to be honest. Um, and so it's been interesting that I've attracted the type of clientele that it really is looking to go a little deeper than just what they put on their bodies and their clothes, and really figure out how they want to manifest their look based on how they feel inside.
Yes, I love that. I love how clearly connected it is to the topic of the podcast in terms of like what you express, how you express yourself, and how who you are, or how clothing in the context of the work you do is just an expression of who you are.
Absolutely. My sister, I knew I was going to bring this up. My sister just sent me this really cool 2.5 minute like little blip from BBC, and it was about this 25-year-old male in the UK who only dresses himself in clothes that he made, fashioned after like Victorian historical figures, basically from the 1680s to the 1920s. And his whole view about why he dresses the way he dresses was, it was flippant, but it was confident, and it was it was really cool to watch right before getting on this podcast with you, because he said, this is who I feel comfortable being in my clothes, and why would I ever do anything that wasn't that? And I was like, oh, yes.
So let's talk about authentic self-expression, because that again is so much of what you help people do through clothing. But let's talk about, like, kind of on a bigger level, why it's hard for us to express ourselves authentically, what it takes to feel confident in your authenticity, and why for some of us it's easier to kind of just play small and not take up the space we know we actually really deserve.
Yeah, so I was thinking about doing this obviously in the past few days, and I started thinking about what little girls look like and what children look like when they're running around, and how confident they are, even at 3 and 4 and 5. And I started thinking about what it looks like to see, particularly because we're female, little girls at social gatherings, and how you kind of watch this child sort of take up space and explore in a sea of adults, and she isn't really there to prove anything or what she's doing. She's just out there curious, and she's being herself, and people actually kind of move out of her way as she explores. And I'm sure you've seen that before in
Yeah.
a child.
Yeah.
And I think that's really our authentic self. That's just our curious nature. That's being who we want to be. And when we are who we want to be inside and outside, people kind of move out of our way. I mean, there's just some resistance sometimes, but for the most part, people are really inspired by those who know how to be themselves fully.
Yeah.
Um, I think particularly for women, we start to play small when we recognize we're making other people feel uncomfortable,
Yeah, totally.
and that I hope is going to change for the next generation of women, that that we start taking up space, or we continue to keep the space that we take up as children as we move into elementary school and adulthood and teen years, and recognize that wherever we are, we belong there just as much as our male counterparts.
Yeah. I wrote down this quote on my phone a couple months ago now, and it was, "You're never in a room you don't deserve to be in."
Yes.
You're never in a room you don't deserve to be in. And one thing I do want to share, since people are just listening to us, when I first met you, Lillian, and I again want to just try to articulate the person you are and why I immediately was like, podcast now. I personally, and I shared this with you in a little voice note a couple days ago, but I've realized through a lot of self development and inner work that I've been doing in my own life that I tend to make myself small in certain situations, and there's almost like fear tied to greatness. There's fear tied to letting our light shine as bright as we know it is. And when I sat down across from Lillian for lunch, 2 weeks ago now, the first thing I noticed, and the thing that really stuck with me, is how not just present you are, but how much space you take up. And I want to talk about what that actually means, because I feel like we maybe assume everyone speaks this crazy
Yeah,
coaching lingo.
definitely.
But to take up space, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what it actually means too. But in the context of you and our lunch and being around you, it was kind of this, not necessarily just confidence, but this sense of like self-assuredness, strong sense of self, worthiness. I'm here, I'm in my body, I'm taking up the space I know I deserve, and I'm here to live big, I'm here to live out loud, I'm here to be with, to your point when you talk about children, like with nothing to prove, right? And
Yeah.
it was so refreshing, and it just made me realize how few people I know who really take up space in that way. And it's so powerful, and it's so beautiful to be around light in that way, to show you that A, it's possible, B, there's nothing threatening about it, right? Like, what is it that we're afraid of when we keep ourselves small and we just kind of stand on the sidelines? Like, I don't know, to see that it's possible through the way you exist is just, it was so beautiful. And I cannot wait to continue getting to know you and seeing how you move through the world. And just want to thank you for how you show up for yourself.
Thank you so much. It's so incredible and so cool to be um, to have that reflected back to me is such a gift. And you're so eloquent with words, and you're such a beautiful writer. And receiving that message from you on my phone right before I went in to teach a spin class was so inspiring and so needed that day. I'm sure you remember that for me. But I think particularly what impresses me about you is that I think we're like a 3-year age difference, and usually someone that sees someone with a certain level of confidence, if they're not significantly older and they're looking down like, wow, that woman who's 31 has a lot of confidence and I'm 50 and I can appreciate that, that's kind of normal. But usually when there's someone who's 28, 30, 35, and they're looking at someone that's 31 that has a level of confidence, they're like, gosh, that girl needs to sit down. um, so to be seen by a peer and to be honored with that, it means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Of course. Yes. And like that too, right, is touching on the idea of just like sharing. We don't tend to share these things to the people we feel these ways about, right? Like,
Totally.
and especially for like a new kind of relationship, like we haven't known each other that long, but I feel like it's so important in relationship and in the world today to really give each other that kind of feedback and to just show someone that like, hey, I see you, I appreciate you, and I acknowledge who you are and how you show up in the world. And so if anyone's listening and is like, man, there is someone who I'd love to go and share something with, go do that. They'll love it. It'll make everyone feel good.
Yeah, especially you can always tell when it comes from a genuine place. And I think there are a few things here. One is that we're all one. And I know that's very like, like I actually almost texted you before this and I was like, how woo do you want to go? Because like,
I'm all in for the woo.
So like one is that we're all one. And if we were like, I just have this, I think I told you before, like I think in like heavy visuals, and I'm even thinking about like if you were in one of those like playpen things at a fast food place where there are all those balls and you jump into the balls, we're all the same size in terms of like those balls. We're all the same size. We're just like different colors, and some of us are like kind of poked, and some of us are kind of bent, some of us are scratched, and some of us are brand new because we haven't had as many experiences, but we're all the same size, like truly. And that is, there's no if you then me kind of like wishy-washy. That's all ego stuff. And our souls are truly like, guess what, we're all so expansive that we're just like melting into each other because that's how expansive we are. Our egos are the things that get all like puffy and shrunk and bent and blah 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 blah. But when we decide to shrink, I start to think about things on a cellular level. And when we shrink, we're literally telling ourselves, like, okay, let's be smaller, let's be smaller. Okay, now you need to die down, you need to do this. And that causes dis-ease in the body. And that's just, it's not worth giving up. It's not worth giving up your life. You just have to kind of pay attention to what you're sacrificing. I mean, like, really, what are you sacrificing by giving your power or your space or your room, which we all have and we all have an equal amount? What are we giving up by like letting someone else be bigger than us?
Yeah. And what are we telling ourselves we're gaining by doing that? That's the question I always come back to, is like, why? What am I assuming this is doing? How is this helping? Who is this actually helping? And
Yeah.
how do you break it becomes a pattern. Like, how do you break that pattern when it's become kind of the way you exist for however many years in your life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So like, what is the impact of your shrunken state, basically?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know? And I think sometimes you can identify faster what the impact is before you can even identify why. but
Mhm.
you know right away, like, oh, well, when I do this, then I do that.
Right.
And the why, like, it's important, but it's not like figuring out your why isn't necessarily going to negate whether you do it again.
Mhm. And a lot of what I feel like happens is we tend to define ourselves by, well, not we tend to, we do. We define ourselves by the way we show up in the world. And we tell
Yeah.
ourselves, our minds, kind of like our ego, looks for reasons to validate and perpetuate our way of being. And like for me, a lot of the narrative is like, well, by shrinking or like by dimming my light or by playing small, it makes me more relatable, or it makes me kind of
Mm.
share in everyday struggles with people, or it makes me it basically, like, it's this, because of that, then here's actually a positive that I'm getting from it. And to imagine existing without the thing that's gotten me to where I am, without that pattern, is a shedding of a part of yourself. And there's understandably going to be fear tied to that and uncertainty tied to it, but you have to also give your time and yourself the time and space to imagine, what would life look like if I stopped playing small, if this pattern, ended tomorrow, if I showed up in the way I knew I really wanted to. What could happen then that's counter to the negative consequence I've been kind of making up in my mind until now?
Yeah. I have a challenge for you, and that is, this is something I used to see myself doing all the time, is I would extend a very genuine, very authentic compliment about someone, like, oh, I really love, like, you have a great back. Like, your back muscles are amazing. Were you a swimmer? Do you like work on that? Do you do Pilates? And the woman, quote unquote, receiving this compliment immediately takes the compliment, turns it around, says, no, 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 I don't have this, da, 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 da. And my reaction was always, yeah, I get it. Mine too.
Yeah.
Me too. That really sucks in my body too. Let's commiserate together about like how shitty this is for both of
Yeah.
us. And now I am in such a different place where I will stand firm and almost kind of like, I'm literally not going to meet you there, but if you would like to meet me up here on this realm of belief and this realm of courage, feel free to meet me up here, but I will not stoop down to that. I will not stoop down, not only to not talking badly about myself, but I'm not going to talk badly about you, because if you're looking for confirmation for that, I'm not here for it.
Yes. Okay. So I recorded an episode a few weeks ago on protecting your energy. And
Oh, yeah.
that's exactly the kind of visual that I gave folks. I said, if you're at a 10, someone's at a 2, why go down from 10 to 2 if they could come up from 2 to 10? Like, give them that space, challenge them to rise, because otherwise going down to 2 or even meeting in the middle, like, you're not doing anyone any good by dimming that light.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot about thought leadership, and I really hope that that's the direction in which social media and just different characters online are headed, and I believe they are. I, of course, absolutely see you as a thought leader, but those are small actions that create such a big impact, and it's all about the change in your mindset. Um,
Yeah.
and once you elevate that one person to do that, they know that that's your standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You set a new expectation.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me more about, this is kind of a big question and we can definitely break it up, but I'm assuming, and from what I do know about you, to get to a point in life now where you're pursuing your purpose, you're doing meaningful work with other people, for other people, you're kind of this force in your space. And both of us know that, like, it takes a lot of inner work. It takes a lot of turning inward, digging deep, knowing who you are, what you want, how you want to show up in the world. It takes a lot of time and patience to kind of cultivate and become that.
Let's not forget money. It takes some money too, because you got to invest in,
Yeah,
in a lot of exploration to help you along the way. I
totally.
mean, it sounds very privileged, but man, when you're asked to give a talk, or it's like, hey, yeah, I've got a few things figured out, but I invested in this. I invested not just time and energy and emotional space, but I hired people to help me do
Totally.
this. Like this is work that I didn't just sit down and go, I'm going to just write a book about how awesome I am. It was like, no, I've got to have someone hold up this mirror and be like, you tell yourself.
Yeah.
So, I think that people forget that when they ask, for services and things like that. It's like, wait a second, don't think that I got here just fresh out the womb, girl. you know, this is a lot of work on every level.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about. Tell me about what that work looked like for you, and as much, however much or little you want to share about that.
Absolutely. So I was a really, really rambunctious kid. I went to three different third grades. You're like, whoa, I didn't mean start when you're 8, but I went to three different third grades when I was like 8. My parents were like, whoa, what do we do with this girl? um, and I was in theater, and that was kind of a saving grace for me, was this like place to put this energy. I was a cheerleader. I continued to kind of bounce around in schools, even though I lived in the same house my whole childhood. My parents really wanted what was best for me and my siblings, like all along the way. I went to Wofford for 2 years, and after my first semester, I experienced sexual assault that really rocked me and took that fireball person. Um, and just, it was like someone took a syringe in me and just zapped it all and injected more self loathing than you can really put into words or on paper or in a song. Um, and I was in a really dark, really bad place for a long time. I'm really thankful. I know that it's a privilege to say that my parents, once they found out what had happened, they were on me like white on rice, and they were like, "Here are your options. You're going to therapy twice a week, or you're going to therapy twice a week." And I was like, "Oh my god!" So yeah, those were the beginning stages of like really healing. Um, and I think learning to listen to my intuition during that and combating just the self-loathing was the biggest turning point for me.
Mm,
I think we all struggle, whether it's with depression or something that we grew up with hearing, or a message that we received from the culture in which we were raised. We do have these voices of doubt. We all have
mm,
those. But it's almost like there are two dogs in the fight every day and every night, right? And the one you feed the most is the one that
mhm.
wins. And so learning to feed the good fight dog and continue to kind of power up for myself, and not just boost myself with words, but boost myself with food and exercise and sleep and community and friendships and professional relationships within counseling sessions, that we're feeding that good dog, that good fighting
Yeah.
dog. It took years to get back. And it's super strange. I used to hear people say, everything happens for a reason, blah blah blah, and for years I was like, screw you, dude.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm like, man, I'm hesitant to use the word thankful, but I understand
Mhm.
deeply why everything happens. I really do. And to be able to turn around and help people go through these similar emotions, whatever it was that has gotten them down, it's a privilege and an honor. And I'm crying.
Yeah. It is. It's absolutely
Yeah.
a privilege and honor to be able to not just be able to go there for yourself, but show people how they can do it for themselves as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
So it's yeah, it takes time. And I remember saying, how long is this going to
Mhm.
take? And I probably saw within the first year like 6 different specialists and therapists, and I truly had post traumatic stress
Yeah.
disorder, truly. And being in a very homogenous conservative environment at Wofford was kind of like burning yourself and then walking into a bonfire, just to I mean, it was the worst part. So changing my circumstances, my location, to be at Agnes Scott like step one that had to happen, was kind of unrooting myself from a place where I'd been very sick,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and finding roots in a place that was empowering. Um, I have spoken to a few clients whose daughters have gone through similar situations, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you cannot stay in the fate. You can't expect to change where traumas
Yeah.
occurred. You can't just like stay there. But I'm a fighter, man. I got so sick. I got mono. Had joint issues. I got so sick that I was like forced to leave. And I think that's a beautiful message that you have to listen to, is that your body is literally talking to you all the time.
Absolutely. Listening, tuning in, and not continuing to shove it under the rug, because the longer you do that, the more force it's going to gain and the harder it's going to hit
Yeah.
later down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to take an experience like that and recognize, from where you are now, to be at a point of, to use your words, like self-loathing, and to be in such a low place, and to see you now from the outside and see nothing but so much love, Lillian, like self-love, and in a way that like so clearly projects and like touches and reaches people around you. It's just so incredible to witness that, and to be able to hear what that transformation has been like for you. Not to say it's done, right? We're never done evolving, we're never done learning, we're never done doing the work, but
Yeah.
love is such a clear core part of who you are, and like, again, how you show up in the world, and it's just necessary to celebrate that.
Thank you, Talia. I really appreciate that, and I really received that. Thank you.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the quotes I posted on Instagram, and that's actually how you and I initially kind of reconnected. It was a quote by Rumi, and the quote was, "Your task is not to seek for love, but to find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it."
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And that, I mean, that speaks to it exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think, okay, well, now I'm treating this sexual trauma, or I'm treating this whatever it is, a parent's divorce or something of that nature that's, traumatic. But then you realize, like, yeah, because of this, that, and the other, like, then my relationships got kind of screwed up, and then the way I related to women got kind of screwed up, and then the way, like it affects everything. And so you have to not just treat yourself, but kind of treat how you move through the world, and
Mm-hmm.
recognize, like, okay, because of this, I created this pattern, and I've lived in this pattern, and how do I break that down, and how do I find, like, that piece of myself that still maybe believes that I don't deserve love, or I will never find that, or that something can't be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do, you like, I'm a firm believer in journaling and whiteboarding, and I believe that when you write down, what am I sacrificing? That was a big one for me when I got to Agnes Scott. I was in such a kind of torn up mental space. I was like, what am I sacrificing by just staying here in this place in my head?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I go
Yeah.
with it?
Yeah. And am I ready for the change? Because sometimes we need to give ourselves time to be in that space, and to accept and acknowledge that we're there.
Yeah,
That's such an important part of the process, but it's knowing when it's time to get to the next step in the process.
absolutely. Yeah, like, okay, you're no longer in the place of the trauma. Let's not act like you are. You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
time to move forward.
Yeah. And be able to take responsibility, and hold yourself accountable to the things are on the other side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness, we could talk for so much longer.
Gosh, I know.
But I do, and like, we will 100% have another podcast conversation down the road. What I do want to ask you is around the topic of living a life of significance.
Yes.
You, again, do this so beautifully and clearly in the work through, intentionally gray, through your style therapy work, and I would love to hear in your own words what it means to you to live a life of significance and how to do it.
Mm. Oh, it's such an important question, and it's one that I'm really thankful that it has been modeled in my family through my aunts and my grandparents and my parents and my brother and my sister. When I think about the word significance, I immediately think of the word ripple. Uh,
Mm,
and significance to me means maybe you touch one person, but that person turns around and touches another person, and that your effect and your reach just becomes so massive, not because you're Billy Graham and you speak to millions of people, but because you speak to one, two, three, four, five people, or one, and your impact spans to other people.
mm,
I think that when we acknowledge that light that we all have within us and we become that light, we also become these like vessels of light. And
mhm.
it's not unlike a lighthouse. And then people start coming to that lighthouse, and instead of preaching and telling people how to be the light, you just show them, and you just ask them, how can I help you navigate, through your journey? How can I be this lighthouse for you, and what can I shed light on within you and around you? And then that lighthouse work, like, it just keeps igniting fires in other people.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that the work that we do with one person, it can affect generations. I think about some of the
Mhm.
women that I've worked with whose mothers were very unkind and were, teased their daughters or made comments about their weight and things like that. And um, getting to restore, like, be a part of the restoration part of the restoration process for that woman that received that negative emotional abuse. um, Getting to restore that dignity to her ensures that she does not pass that down to her daughter and to her
Yeah.
daughter and to her daughter.
It's
um,
so powerful.
yeah. And so our light holds the ability to shift the navigation of ships and reroute them and illuminate the world. I mean, that to me is significance. And I think it's very difficult to be truly significant until you tap into what it is that you have to offer the world.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer that power givers are not the people that um, just walk around plugging into people, but they ask people, what do you need to do to restore your own power? It's not
Mhm.
about me walking in and just giving you all this information and then all of a sudden you're set. It's
Yeah.
me asking you what questions you need to answer for yourself. And those are
Yeah.
the best healers. Those are the best, um, the most illuminating lighthouses do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Showing people their own light and showing them that everything they're looking for and everything they need is within them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. That was such a beautiful response. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think again, so much of what you shared kind of rests upon the power of storytelling and sharing your story, right? Like so much of our light comes from our life experience. So again, thank you for sharing your life experiences, the stories that you've lived through, you've been through, and all in service of more light, brighter light.
Yeah. Yeah. My family's mantra, actually, that my mom instilled in us from a very young age was just three words, and that's be the light. Like,
Mhm.
we are just vessels. That's what we're here to do, is just be the light, not to change people, not to make them think the way that we think or whatever. It's just to illuminate light where there's darkness, and there's a lot of darkness in the world. And where
Yeah,
there's darkness is where the most light is needed.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, girl. Last question for you. If you were to write a letter to yourself, so again, the podcast is all about your relationship to self and kind of walking yourself through your own journey. Not to say that it doesn't require help from the outside sometimes, but
Sure.
if you were to talk to yourself at any point in time, what point in time would it be, and what would you say to yourself?
So I've thought about this, knowing that you've asked it on other
Yeah.
podcasts, um,
Mm-hmm.
or other episodes rather. I know what I would say. The time that I would say it is a 15-year span.
Okay.
um, I think from, freshman year in high school when you're really like, oh my gosh, like, am I okay? Am I okay who I am in the world? Like, am I enough and okay? Am I too much?
Mhm.
Um, to literally probably like until I turned 30, I have just thought something was wrong with me because I'm a little different and a little funky and a little myself and a little loud and a little out there. And I think my message to my younger self would just be there's nothing wrong with you. And
Mhm.
like just being free in that and not like looking for things to pick apart about myself. Oh, I did this. Oh, I'm always doing this. Oh, I'm always messing up. I always do this. I like those are such damning thoughts to continue to repeat to yourself. Or I always show up in a social situation and this happens because I'm this and I'm wrong and I'm bad and it's like, no, nothing's wrong with you,
Mhm.
period.
Yeah, you are enough.
Yeah, and just recognizing like me, you, we're all part of this divine order and everything is happening through us. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with us. And we're not born these like damned horrible beings that we have to fix. Um, we experience things that make us react, and we have to learn how to take our experiences and use them for good. But there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with us.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with me.
beautiful. Love that. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay, so I have no doubt that people listening will 100% want to follow up and learn more about you, see what you're up to, and see the incredible work you put out into the world. So let us know how folks can get in touch with you.
Okay, well, my phone number, I'm just kidding. I don't even have that on my business card. My website for style therapy is lilliancharles.com. And anyone can email me there. My email address is pretty simple. It's heygirl@lilliancharles.com. And my Instagram is Lillian Gray, Gray, Charles. Pretty simple. And from there, you'll see my workshop page, which is intentionally gray, Gray. And the website for my workshops is also intentionallygray.com. I mean, just so many ways to get in touch with me, really, honestly.
I'll link all of those in the show notes for any of you who are listening. And I wish we were in the same room so I could give you a nice, big, somewhat sweaty hug right now.
I love it so much. It's so amazing, Tallia. This work you're doing is so important and so needed.
Thank you.
I am just really thankful for the light that you exude and project and that you offer so wholeheartedly to all of those people that you come in contact with in person and on the podcast. And we're really lucky to have you on earth at this time and share you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Girl, we got some magic to create together, you and I.
I know. I'm so happy.
You guys, if listening to Lillian's story slash witnessing her existence slash hearing her laugh does not give you life, you are a crazy person. That was my conversation with Lillian. I hope you enjoyed. If any bits or pieces resonate with you, feel free to give us a shout on Instagram. I will link all of the contact info for both myself and Lillian below if you want to check out the great work she's up to. You have a place to do it. And if you have any questions, comments, podcasts, topics, things you want to hear more about, people you want to hear from, send us an email, sincerelymepodcast@gmail.com. I would love, love, love to hear from you. Hope you have a wonderful day. Go out there, take up some space, live out loud, do your thing. Sincerely, me.